Hello colleagues and welcome to today's presentation. I will be talking about race inclusion and placements in education. Let's learn together as we dive into this very important milestone. Any society that wants to succeed must harness the power of coming together as one unit and take advantage of the synergy created by all parties. Different potentials and skills are channeled towards a single common vision when diverse people unite and work together in harmony. It is also vital for the public image and reputation of the society when all races are represented in positions of power and leadership, thus making resources and their subsequent distribution and utilization much easier. Diversity in any society brings out some aspects of a unique richness and enhances the culture of embracing and appreciating our uniqueness as exhibited from all possible angles. It is therefore very important for us to establish the culture of coming together, the culture of uniting, and the culture of embracing each other's potential weaknesses and shortcomings in order for us to succeed as one able society. Racial inequality, both from a student, teacher, or any educational leader perspective, can be traced back to the early colonization era, when the colonists exercised excessive authority and oppression of the minority groups, describing themselves as master and lord over the so-called slaves. It was unheard of to find interracial places of learning, and in addition, the chain of command was purposely and intentionally profiled to suit a single race. Inequality in the distribution of resources meant that the less fortunate would continually experience hardships in the attempt to access basic life resources. Implementation and exercise of white supremacy over all other races meant that only white people and their families would be considered in special schools and positions of influence. The white race was considered the epitome and the base scale of defining success and leadership. The presence of laws of segregation and separation meant that at no point would a minority and inferior race rule over or mingle with the superior white race. This was seen more so in the school settings and leadership hierarchy, which only appreciated and accommodated the dominant race. It was therefore a one-race survival, whereby the more dominant race, the more race that had got all the powers and all the positions of authority to make decisions will only make decisions that will be beneficial to them in the detriment or in the suffering of other races. They will take advantage of those other races and also exercise more power and more resources to themselves. Melting point in this context or in this presentation describes a time and a period when the minority groups decided that enough was enough and therefore commenced the fight for inclusion and recognition within the society setting as a whole. This period was characterized by the endless desire for change, particularly in the laws and the constitution in general. Different minority groups began to seek amendments to racially discriminative laws to include a more diverse cultured society. Religion, on the other hand, played a vital role in teaching and creating awareness among people on the different doctrines and different teachings that included love and appreciation of all mankind. The belief in God necessitated different people to seek to exemplify what God would have done in such circumstances. Minority groups desired a better world and a future, not only for themselves, but also for their children and the future generation, and thus they decided to change the status quo by fighting for their rights, by ensuring that they are being recognized not only in learning environment but also in positions of power, in positions of authority, in places where people make decisions that affect their welfare in general. Some of the notable cases during this melting point period include the case of Brown versus the Board of Education of Kansas City, where Brown sought to seek redress in court because her daughter Linda was denied admission to the most affluent or the more affluent all-white schools. Brown claimed that schools for black children were not of equal quality and that continued segregation was a violation of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, which guaranteed equal protection for all people. The court granted Brown's players that segregated schools are inherently unequal, and this judgment further fueled more civil rights movements. We have other cases just to mention, but a few. One of the notable cases was the Montgomery bus boycott led by Martin Luther King Jr., which is regarded as the mother of all movements. These and many other campaigns led by different personalities played a great deal in pushing for reforms and centered the agenda for race inclusion in our schools and systems of learning and education in general. The turning point. The turning point represents the fruits labored by the civil rights movements, which resulted in the recognition of different cultures in the educational precincts. Different minority groups will be allowed access to educational facilities and resources. The laws of segregation were relaxed, and education became a preserve for all, although there were still some underground challenges where you could find one or two sections of a school or community still segregating other races. There was the emergence of different languages and interpretations of educational resources to cater to the needs of the now diverse environment, in that the environment was now diverse and we have different communities coming together, and this necessitated the interpretation of the learning resources to all those languages in order to cater for those needs. Even the distribution of resources was exercised and implemented across the board by adhering to certain parameters such as population of students and community, availability and scarcity of resources and personnel. These positive steps and outcomes fostered the multiculturalism experience in our schools today. The continued relevance of diversity in our schools meant that there is equity and equality in admission of our students, that each student has the right to education regardless of race and other forms of discrimination. It also presents equivalent ratios in teacher representation and leadership positions, award, and recognition. We see different groups holding positions of power and authority, which gives a positive message and a good public image to stakeholders. Even resource allocation and distribution, coupled with accountability for duties and responsibilities, means that each personnel, regardless of race or any other form of discrimination, is accountable for resources under his or her charge. The recent surgence of languages across the education system means that more and more interracial language interpretation of resources and materials is paramount to ensure that the society grows forward. As evidence in any milestone, challenges abound that hinder and backtrack the success made so far with this racial inclusion. For instance, differences in stakeholder interests and conflicts where benefits are self-centered as opposed to a common shared goal for all. Qualified and competent people leaving the teaching profession. We have seen the outflux of competent people. They are leaving the teaching profession and going for other greener pastures. Presence of restrictive laws and regulation in some quarters, coupled with inadequacy in finding competent people to oversee and take charge of governance in some educational communities. These and many more challenges are still the major challenges towards total and complete inclusion and diversity in our learning environment. It is therefore very important for us to ensure that we have more strategies to ensure that more and more race inclusion is cultured in this regard, so that we have people of all races being represented, we have people of all manners being looked upon in order for us to ensure that uniqueness, that diversity, we embrace our differences in that we all move forward together. Going forward, and as a major next step in this milestone, we as leaders ought to realize that the struggle still continues, and we need to continue fighting for equal representation and diversity in our schools, not only in terms of race, but also in other aspects, such as resource allocation and curriculum overhaul. We should lobby for sound and well-balanced educational rules and laws. We should welcome and embrace the idea of pluralism, which includes the intermingling of together of different races and different sections of the community among different sections of society. Make our differences the very source and essence of our strength and unity, and above all, love one another as we forge towards a common goal in peace and harmony. I hope and believe that you have learned something new with this presentation. Thank you all.